Hello everybody. If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 473, The Mysterious Case of the Missing Scones. Intermediate. Detective Emily Windsor was known for her sharp mind and love of baked goods. She had solved some of the most baffling cases in the sleepy town of Bottomley, where everyone knew each other's business. But nothing could have prepared her for the mysterious case of the missing scones. It started on a typical Wednesday morning at the Bottomley bakery, where the owner, Mrs. Jenkins, frantically called the police station. "My stones have gone missing," she exclaimed. "I had a batch of 20 scones ready for the morning rush, and now they're all gone." Detective Windsor arrived at the bakery, where she found Mrs. Jenkins in a state of panic. "Don't worry, Mrs. Jenkins," Emily said calmly. "I'll get to the bottom of this. Can you tell me more about the missing scones?" "Well, I baked them last night and left them to cool on the counter," Mrs. Jenkins replied. "This morning they were gone. I've looked everywhere, but I couldn't find them anywhere." Emily began to investigate, questioning the bakery staff and searching for any clues. She noticed a suspicious character lurking around the alley behind the bakery, a tall, thin man with a scruffy beard and a black leather jacket. "Excuse me, sir," Emily said, approaching the man. "What are you doing here?" The man turned around, startled. "Oh, just looking for a coffee shop," he stammered. Emily wasn't convinced. "I think you're looking for something more than just coffee," she said, her eyes narrowing. "What's your name?" "I'm, Jack," the man replied, quickly glancing around the alley. Emily made a mental note of the man's description and decided to follow him. She tailed him to a small cafe on the outskirts of town, where he met up with a woman with bright pink hair and a tattoo of a snake on her arm. The woman glanced around the cafe nervously before leaning in close to Jack. "Did you get the scones?" she whispered. Jack nodded, pulling out a bag from his pocket. "Yeah, I got them, but I had to sweet-talk the bakery staff to get them." The woman's eyes lit up. "Brilliant! Now we can finally get the recipe." Emily's ears perked up. "Recipe? What recipe?" She decided to eavesdrop further, hiding behind a nearby pillar. The woman, whose name was Ruby, explained that they were trying to steal the secret recipe for Mrs. Jenkins's famous scones. "We've been trying for months, but Mrs. Jenkins is too clever," Ruby said. "But with these scones we can finally crack the code." Emily's curiosity was piqued. She decided to pay a visit to Mrs. Jenkins and ask her about the recipe. When she arrived at the bakery, Mrs. Jenkins was frantic again. "My recipe book is missing," she exclaimed. "I kept it in a safe place, but now it's gone." Emily's eyes widened. This case was getting more complicated by the minute. She decided to pay Jack and Ruby another visit. When she arrived at the cafe, she caught them trying to decipher the recipe. Jack was scribbling notes on a piece of paper, while Ruby was tasting a scone and making notes. "Aha! I don't think so," Emily said, approaching them. "You're not getting away with this. Return the scones and the recipe book, or face the consequences." Jack and Ruby looked at each other nervously before Jack spoke up. Okay, we'll return everything, but you have to promise not to tell Mrs. Jenkins about our plan." Emily smiled wryly. "I'm a detective, not a miracle worker, but I'll give you a chance to make amends. Return the scones and the recipe book, and I'll let you off with a warning." Jack and Ruby nodded in unison, returning the stolen goods to Emily. As they walked away, Emily couldn't help but chuckle. Well, that was a scone-filled adventure. When Emily returned to the bakery, Mrs. Jenkins was overjoyed to have her scones and recipe book back. "Thank you, Detective Windsor. You're a lifesaver." Emily smiled. "All in a day's work, Mrs. Jenkins, but next time, maybe keep a closer eye on your baked goods." As Emily walked back to the police station, she couldn't help but think that this case was a bit of a joke. But she had solved it, and that's all that mattered. After all, a detective's got to keep her priorities straight, and for Emily, that meant solving cases and enjoying a good scone or two. Vocabulary notes. Baffling, adjective. Meaning, completely puzzling or confusing. Example, she had solved some of the most baffling cases in the sleepy town of Bottomley. Similar words, perplexing, enigmatic, mystifying. Example sentence, the detective found the clues to be baffling, but she was determined to solve the case. Frantically, adverb, meaning in a wild or uncontrolled manner, often because of anxiety or panic. Example, Mrs. Jenkins frantically called the police station. Similar words, desperately, anxiously, hysterically. Example sentence, the fire alarm went off and people frantically rushed out of the building. Suspicious, adjective, meaning causing suspicion or doubt. Example, she noticed a suspicious character lurking around the alley behind the bakery. Similar words, dubious, questionable, shady. Example sentence, the police officer became suspicious of the man's behavior and decided to question him further. Scruffy, adjective, meaning having an untidy or rough appearance. Example, a tall, thin man with a scruffy beard and a black leather jacket. Similar words, unkempt, dishevelled, shabby. Example sentence, the scruffy dog wagged its tail and gave me a friendly lick on the hand. Stammered, verb, meaning spoke with hesitation or repetition, often due to nervousness. Example, oh, just looking for a coffee shop, he stammered. Similar words, stumbled, faltered, mumbled. Example sentence, the student stammered over her words during the presentation, but she eventually composed herself. Eavesdrop, verb, meaning listen secretly to a private conversation. Example, she decided to eavesdrop further, hiding behind a nearby pillar. Similar words, overhear, snoop, spy. Example sentence, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help but hear their argument in the next room. Decipher, verb, meaning figure out the meaning of something, often a code or puzzle. Example, Jack was scribbling notes on a piece of paper while Ruby was trying to decipher the recipe. Similar words, decode, interpret, crack. Example sentence, the cryptologist spent years trying to decipher the ancient text. Wryly, adverb, meaning in a dryly humorous or ironic way. Example, Emily smiled wryly. I'm a detective, not a miracle worker. Similar words, dryly, ironically, sardonically. Example sentence, he commented wryly that he was thrilled to be working late on a Friday night. Story written by Meta AI. Image created by Designer AI. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you.